Good evening, everybody. It's Thursday, May 9th. I was going to wait until the end of the Rangers-Carolina Hurricanes game, but the Canes tied it up late in the third, and the game is headed to overtime. So I'm jumping in, heading into the fourth period to bring you guys the latest on your New York Giants. I was all ready to talk about in my open the excitement of the Knicks and the Rangers going deep, thinking of shades of 1994, right? Of course, the Rangers do look like a talented team. They look like a team that can do it. But as we sit here right now, it's nail biting time. But thank you for being here with me on another Talkin Ball live with Pat Leonard. I'm the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer, and I'm here to talk to you guys mainly about an interesting signing by the Giants front office here. Allen Robinson II, a wide receiver, a veteran. You guys know him well. He had 3,000-yard seasons in his career, one with the Jacksonville Jaguars and a Pro Bowl year back in 2015 when he actually had 14 touchdown catches in that season. He also had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, both seasons actually over 11 for the Chicago Bears. And, of course, now has been on 4 teams in 4 years. But you look at his pedigree, look at his accomplishments in the NFL, what he's been able to do, obviously not in the last few years, but his resume instantly jumps to the top of the heap in the Giants wide receiver room. Of course, Malik Neighbors, the number 6 overall pick, is slated to be the top target, the biggest weapon, really the face of the franchise of this new Giants franchise. But talking to people, asking around the NFL immediately after the Giants announced this signing of Allen Robinson II, I would say it was met with a little bit of consternation and confusion from some circles. People just pointing out, not necessarily that the Giants have the best receiving core in the NFL or anything like that, but they do have a lot of names and players who project to factor in and be on the field for this team, right? Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, both high draft picks by the current general manager, Joe Schoen. Darius Slayton, despite that contract situation, leads your team in receiving for the last 5 years. Isaiah Hodgins, a guy who kind of found his way to Chateau Bow Wow last year for some reason, but has been a red zone threat and really one of Joe Schoen's bigger success stories when it comes to identifying talent that can help the team, bringing him over from Buffalo. And that's really just the tip of the iceberg of guys who are supposed to be competing for jobs when you think of, Isaiah McKenzie, a guy who was brought in who has familiarity with Daboll and Shane and that Buffalo Bills offense and attack, and some other veteran depth names, and even Bryce Ford Wheaton, a young player with size who was promising in his rookie training camp before getting injured and missing his rookie year. So really interesting that Robinson is here. And my 2 cents as we get into another Talkin Ball live from talking to sources in the NFL is a couple of things. Number one, it doesn't hurt the Giants receiving core to have an established veteran, even if he hasn't produced in recent years, on the roster competing. Should make everybody else better and could end up asserting himself, frankly, as one of the better weapons on this Giants team. It's still possible Allen Robinson could do that. He's an excellent route runner. By all accounts, people who know him closely, who I know, a great person, human being, leader, locker room guy, but has always run clean routes, and really going back 3 or 4 years was a guy who other teams had to game plan for. Now, obviously, he's not at that point in his career, turns 31 in August. But when you look at his last few years also, Allen Robinson, he has played in, let's say, less than ideal situations when it comes to quarterback play. So, of course, he was with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year, who had Kenny Pickett under center, and then ended up with Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph. That was not a quarterback situation that anyone was going to thrive under. Coming off of a season with the LA Rams, if you remember, even though Matthew Stafford's an elite quarterback, that was the season Stafford only played 9 games. It was kind of a revolving door at QB. Baker Mayfield ended up making his way over to Los Angeles. And then even prior to that, going back to his Chicago years, playing with, Mitch Trubisky, and just being in a situation where, Robinson is one of those players who is an excellent receiver, but, few and far between that you see him catching passes from elite quarterbacks. I guess DeAndre Hopkins is another good example of that throughout the bulk of his career, especially when he was with the Texans. Kind of that revolving door of mediocre to bad quarterbacks who suddenly would light it up when they were throwing the ball to that player. Now, I'm not saying Allen Robinson is going to jump into the Giants wide receiver room and instantly produce, right? That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying, you think about the Paris Campbell signing last year, right? And the funny thing about that is Joe Schoen actually admitted that that was one of those signings that was related to them trying to go all in and give Daniel Jones all of the options to go and win right now. And so there's a couple things that stand out to me with this Robinson signing. The first is that it's bringing in a veteran to make your team better. Like if this was just about building for the future while trying to win and compete, but building for the future with your young guys and draft picks, you don't make signings like this, right? Especially when he's versatile, but he played more of his snaps last year for Pittsburgh in the slot. And stop me if you've heard before that the Giants have added another slot receiver, right? So, I think it does scream of, like, they brought in Paris Campbell last year. This is almost like the Paris Campbell type signing, trying to catch lightning in bottle with a veteran and also believing that you need a more reliable option in that regard. But another thing, before I get to your guys' questions, and I do see already they're rolling in. Thank you for being patient, those of you who stuck around. Joel Lopez has a super chat that I'm going to get to right off the bat as I wrap up my point here on Allen. But when you think about Allen Robinson and his addition, Malik Neighbors is only 20 years old. And this is a player who, even though the Giants drafted him and even though they love his playmaking ability and they feel very excited about him and what he can be in their offense, they don't have a ton of veteran presence and experience at the top end of that wide receiver room. Darius Slayton really is the guy, but he hasn't been around in early spring, right? He has had a contract standoff with the team, once a raise, once an extension, once something adjusted in that contract because of his consistency and his production. And so in his absence, in my opinion, and talking to some people around the league, I don't think the Giants would be upset in any way if signing Allen Robinson II was kind of a path to creating a veteran mentorship for Malik Neighbors. Now, you don't just sign a player to be a mentor to another player. So that's not what I'm saying. I prefaced all of this with my explanation of how I feel like he could compete and even function offensively for the Giants. But I do think this is a move to give Malik Neighbors a role model of sorts to look up to and somebody who can guide Neighbors in the process of being a professional day in and day out. And, even when Darius Slayton comes back, Robinson still is just a guy who is revered, high character, who I believe, especially given the fact that Neighbors did most of his damage at LSU in the slot, but also is versatile and can play outside. I think Robinson, as far as a fit in the offense, as far as coaching up Neighbors on how to behave day in and day out in a big market, carry himself, I do think that could either be a primary side benefit of the Robinson signing or could end up being the biggest result and the most productive part of Robinson joining the Giants. Could end up being him keeping Neighbors on the straight and narrow and getting him focused and ready to ball out when the fall comes, because there's no time to waste and Neighbors has to be good, great, even right out of the gate for the Giants to be the team they want to be. So it's a one-year veteran salary benefit deal. Josina Anderson had that note about the contract. And so, that's my initial take on Allen Robinson and that signing, talking to some people in the league. But like I said, and I saw some fans reacting to it this way as well, it was a little bit surprising to see a wide receiver signing from the Giants at this juncture. If you thought they were going to add a veteran to compete at a spot, you would have thought it was going to be the other outside corner position and not just another wide receiver to a crowded room. But I do think if you step back and think about the dynamics of that offense, the dynamics of the receiver room, and the fact that we have an unknown kind of future resolution to whatever this Darius Slayton situation is, and the fact that he is absent at the moment, I think those things make sense. So we're going to get right to Joel's question here. I just want to tell you guys about Bet Online. It's your number one source for all your summer sports this season, from MLB, golf, NBA, and NHL playoff stats. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest team matchups, player props and odds on just about every sport out there. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get out on the action. Bet online, where the game starts. Cheers to you guys. I got my old fashioned in hand. Jacob says, smash that like and sub button for Pat on your way in. Thanks for the reminder. As always, Jacob, guys, subscribe to the channel and thumbs up, hit those like buttons as we are live. And Joel sets a great example. If you want your comment or question addressed first or answered immediately, and you can also support the channel in this way, you pay for a super chat or a super sticker in this way, and it elevates it to the top of the queue, and I get right to it. So we go right to Joel. He says, hi, Pat. So is this the end of Tommy Cutlets now that we picked up the quarterback from the Patriots off waivers? Joel, I think there's a good chance the Giants keep Tommy Cutlets around, if for nothing else than for his Q rating when it comes to being a New York Giant and injecting some life into the fan base. They may need it, and they may need it quickly if they don't get off to a fast start in the fall. Now, that's not a reason to keep a player if he's not going to be productive. I do think personally that Nathan Rourke is here to compete and challenge a person like DeVito. DeVito, the way they coached him, protected him last year. I mean, there were times in his first training camp as a rookie with the Giants that he almost wasn't on the team last year, even going into the regular season. Wasn't even on the practice squad practically, let alone on the team. So I do think that, just like I said before about Daniel Jones and Drew Lock and inviting competition, I do think you got to invite competition here with Rourke and Cutlets. I will say I talked to some people who know Rourke's game pretty well. They said he does have some gunslinger to him in a good way, but that, his physical traits are average, not above average. So that he's a quarterback and a player who, if he's running scout team, he can give you some good looks. But so far, seems like some people believe that he's still in those early developmental stages, even though he did produce in one big season there. He played 2 years with the BC Lions in the CFL, and he produced in that second big year there. But even the people who said that he's pretty good didn't necessarily believe it would be obvious that he would beat Tommy DeVito out. But I do think that that's how you have to run your program. If Rourke proves that he is clearly a better option than DeVito, then it doesn't matter. This isn't a sport and a profession where we need mascots, right? Like you don't keep Tommy DeVito as the quarterback if he's not the better quarterback than Rourke, right? So, Joe, I think my short answer to that is I do believe that this provides competition for DeVito. But Tommy has also shown that he's game when he's ready, right? When his number's called, even though he doesn't expect it to be called, he's ready, right? So I'm sure he's ready for another competition, but competition's good. Bringing in another arm is good. I do think, Joel, the primary reason for adding Rourke is with these OTAs and mini camps here. I think having another arm here in the spring primarily is a huge deal. Just in the fact that Daniel Jones, we don't even know how much he's going to do, if at all, as far as throwing with the team in the spring. So I think adding a third quarterback, frankly, at the moment is the priority there, right? I do think it's more likely than not that the Giants as an organization keep DeVito around this year for nothing else than to give the fans something they want, even if they can't give them victories. But like I said, I don't think you want to be a sideshow as an organization and be keeping players just for that reason either. So you do have to bring in competition, and that's why I think that's a good idea. But certainly, and I have to double check this. As I talk to you guys here on Thursday, May 9th, we're on the verge of going to rookie minicamp on Friday and Saturday to watch practices. We'll talk to Brian Dable. We'll talk to some of the rookies. And Rourke was in the NFL last year, but he hasn't played in a game. And there's a part of me that I think, I could be wrong about this when I get on the field, and you may be listening to this on audio by now and already know this answer from what I report from the field out there in East Rutherford on Friday and Saturday, May 10th and May 11th. But because of Rourke's limited experience, he may actually be eligible to throw in this rookie minicamp. If he's not, then I still think it holds for OTAs and the June minicamp to have an extra arm with Daniel Jones continuing to rehab makes sense. But there's even a part of me that wonders, based on his minimal experience, if he can throw at the rookie minicamp, which would make sense. All right, let's see. Jacob, thanks for that question. Jacob says Robinson signing has to indicate a Slayton resolution soon, right? Jacob, I don't think it necessarily does. I actually view it more as like that, the Giants just saying we're not going to resolve that the way that the player wants over here with Darius, but we are going to continue to add players if we need to either compensate for what Slayton's absence is not giving them in the offseason, and also kind of fortify themselves with competition and depth. That's how I see it. I do think about how Paris Campbell was here last year. Slayton was also on the team, right? These other players were on the team. And it looked for a while there like Paris Campbell was actually going to be a big factor. So Paris being on the team last year didn't mean Slayton wasn't going to be on it. So, Allen Robinson being on the team now doesn't mean Darius Slayton's not going to be on it. But I do think that veteran void is a factor. Jacob says, any chance they're going to play Isaiah Simmons more at a primary safety versus linebacker? Any shot they move Hawkins to safety? I think he has the length and athleticism to stick at safety. Trey Hawkins, I think, is more of a corner. Not sure he would be comfortable back there at safety. You got to bring the wood if you're a safety. I'm not saying he would be afraid to tackle, but listen, if that's what you need to try with a player to try to salvage him, then of course, yeah, you try whatever, whether it's moving a guy around on the line or moving a guy in the secondary. And we'll see what happens when we see them on the field this spring. But I know they drafted him as a corner, and he was, he views himself as a corner. Let's see. Oh, and you asked about Isaiah Simmons at primary safety. Well, I don't want to use the word problem, but this is the issue with Isaiah Simmons that, frankly, in my opinion, I think you talk about Wink Martindale not being here, and anyone can debate about how big of a deal it's going to be or not be. I think it's going to be an enormous detriment to the defense. And I think it's being underrated how big of a loss that's going to be. But specific to players, there are certain players who, because of their positional responsibilities, maybe really depending on what system they're in, doesn't matter a whole lot or isn't going to change much what their responsibilities are, what they're being asked to execute. Simmons, I talked to him about this directly late in the season. I wrote about it. Isaiah Simmons was raving to me about how Martindale coached him and how he kept an open mind and a constant dialogue with Simmons about how they were going to use him, change it up. Here, we're going to use you covering running backs on passing third downs, right? We're going to have you at linebacker here. We're going to have you safety here. We're going to blitz you here strategically. And there was a lot of conversation and dialogue even during practices about what was working, what wasn't, trying things out, experimenting. So it's one issue with Simmons is like for you to say play him more at safety than linebacker. He's not just a safety. He's not just a linebacker either. Like this is why he was such a high pick because he's such an incredible athlete, but he's this in-between talent who to maximize his skill set, at least so far what we've seen is the way to maximize his skill set is to use him strategically and differently depending on the situation. So that takes a creative mind, an aggressive mind. That's what Martindale was. I think Simmons is going to be a guy that Shane Bowen is going to have to prove his mettle with by hopefully executing in the same way. G-Men says, what's up, Pat? Don't know if you saw, but Allen Robinson is wearing number 15. Weird to have players wear the same number on the same side of the ball like DeVito. I know the Giants claimed Nathan Rourke this week. I did not see that on Allen Robinson wearing that. What did he wear last year? He wore 11 last year for the Steelers, 1 for the Rams, 12 for the Bears, and then he wore 15 back with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Right. Interesting. Yeah, no, that is interesting. During the offseason, G-Man, though, you do see duplicate numbers out on the field. You're right. You don't typically see that on the same side of the ball. But, not crazy. I do think also DeVito is technically a practice squad player. So I know he started some games last year and won some games last year and was the local hero, but by and large, I mean, what he essentially is on this roster is a practice squad player. And so I think that would be the reason that if we see Robinson and DeVito both on the field wearing 15 in this spring at the same time, it would be like one guy's on the active and one guy's not. That would be what I'm saying there. Yeah, G-Man asking about DeVito as well. Answered that. Thank you. G-Man says Kayvon Thibodeau and Chase Cota are both listed as having number 5. Jamie Gillen and Bryce Ford Wheaton both have 6. Last year, Beasley shared 9 with Graham Gano. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what these guys are wearing on the field for rookie minicamp and OTAs. G-Man also points out that the Falcons put in a claim for Nathan Rourke. That's correct. Michael, what's going on? Good to see you, man. Always. Hunter says, what's up, Pat? I'm sitting at TD Garden watching my Celtics put up a choke job. Hunter checking in from TD Garden to Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard. Hunter, thank you, man. A loyal viewer. He was heading to the car then. What are the odds Robinson makes the team? I mean, you don't sign a player like Allen Robinson thinking he's not going to make the team. D Kit says another Talkin Ball. D Kit's here this time. I know D Kit said he was upset that he missed the last one, but D Kit, you don't miss many, and we appreciate you. Let's see. D Kit says they aren't cutting DeVito. Let's see. Bill Hartnett says Isaiah Hodgins was fire in 2022. Yes, he was. Yeah, for some reason, it's almost like the Giants recognize that and still, I mean, I know you're always looking for improvements, but I almost felt like they underestimated or appreciated what Hodgins gave them. And that was something they identified, right? So I thought that was weird. By the way, to plug Bill he posted on X when I told everybody about this chat coming tonight. Bill posted, in case anyone needs to pass the time until Pat goes live, Justin Pugh of the Net Worth Show was on with New York Revival recently. And so he plugged the New York Revival pod with Justin Pugh. So I wanted to plug that because, Bill, you've been supporting me here, and I really appreciate that. And, there's a lot of good people like yourself creating content, interacting with creators and fellow fans. And so, I wanted to thank you for engaging and being here. And also everybody, when you have a minute, go check out, subscribe, New York Revival, and go watch that episode with Pugh. And Justin Pugh is indeed a great guy. Joe says, hey, Pat, glad I caught the stream early. Looking forward as always. Keep up the honest work and great vibes. Thank you, Joe. Thank you always. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to get on the field and see some guys. I don't know what they're going to be doing, but just to see some people on the field, on a football field, in East Rutherford is going to be exciting. It's going to get the juices flowing thinking about the fall, though I'm not one of those people who wishes the summer away. I don't do like the countdown to week 1. I'm like, no, I'm good enjoying the sunny days in July. We'll get to September, don't worry about it. Antonio says, hey, Pat, was talking to my cousin earlier about this and wanted to get your opinion. Do you think Allen Robinson is better than Isaiah Hodgins? Well, he's definitely a better NFL player based on his pedigree and track record. Hodgins has Robinson is 6'2". I want to say Hodgins might be 6. Is he 6'4"? Is he that tall? Let me double check his height. I think he is. Maybe it's just the hair. Let's see. Isaiah Hodgins, 6'3". Okay, so Hodgins a little bit more height to him. Has been a good red zone threat. Allen Robinson, though, as far as an NFL player over his career, obviously, it's not a comparison. At this point, I think what you need is guys who can get open, right? So Robinson's always been an excellent route runner. Hodgins recently for the Giants over these last 2 years, when he's gotten the opportunity, has been a really good red zone threat. I do think Robinson is a better pro and player. Just a question of just kind of a question of the fit. I will say, based on how they kind of buried Hodgins on the depth chart last year, I was surprised when he re-signed, frankly. So that kind of caught me off guard. All right, let's see. Bill says, I can't even find stats on this Rourke guy, Joel. Yeah, Bill, exactly. That's because he's never played in an NFL game. He spent time last year, with the Jaguars, Patriots, and I think it was the third team, right? But he never got in a game. He actually worked out for a bunch of teams coming off some CAL time. Go look up the BC Lions stats for the CFL, Bill. You can see what he did there in the Canadian Football League before he tried out for the NFL teams. He actually tried out for the Giants, among many others, last January 2023. So they kind of had an idea based on watching him in person what he was. Hirsch, my man. Hirsch, always here. Appreciate you. Jacob says, Pat, any idea when the War Room draft video is going to come out? I love those things. It brings you into the draft room. Yeah, a lot more. The Giants kind of been slow and steady with some of that content compared to what these other teams have done. What did you guys make of Malik Neighbors' draft call, by the way? It didn't come out the night of or even the day after, and took several days for it to come out. And then what did you think of that draft call? I thought it was interesting that you were seeing every other first round picks draft call immediately, and took a while for Neighbors just to come out, but it could be nothing. So as we were on here, looks like I missed the Rangers winning in OT. Is that correct? 3-2 Rangers. Let's go. Let's go. Rangers win, baby, says Michael. Let's go. Let's go. Cheers. Rangers up 3-0. Listen, as you guys know, maybe you don't if you're new to the channel, or if you're joining us for the first time. So I covered the Giants in the NFL for the Daily News in New York. I've done that since 2016. But before that, I covered the Rangers for the Daily News. And I covered them from the 11-12 season through the 15-16 season, and jumped right onto the Giants for that training camp after that. And, two Eastern Conference finals, one Stanley Cup final, obviously a devastating loss to the LA Kings. I remember vividly walking to the elevator with Chris Kreider after that. Just a lot of things said, a lot of things not said, and just emotions in a moment that I'll remember forever. And I'm pulling for Crides. I'm pulling for the Rangers, ever since being on the beat. Definitely watch them closely, follow them closely. And, there's a more than small part of me that misses covering the Rangers for sure. But so I watch them very closely, and boy, are they skilled. Man, are they talented. And the thing I wanted to say is that the way you win Stanley Cups is by doing what the Rangers are doing right now. And that is getting things out of the way early and quickly. So a first round sweep, now you're up 3-0 in the second round. Like, this is a long, grueling postseason and playoffs and road to a Stanley Cup. It is almost impossible. I mean, teams have done it, obviously, but it's almost impossible when you make it hard on yourself, when you have 6 and 7 game series every darn round. By the time you get to that last round, guys are out of the lineup and hurt and playing on broken ankles, and everyone's gassed. And you got your backup goalie in, right? So this is exciting, honestly. And it is exciting for New York with the Knicks and Rangers both doing so well and deeper in the playoffs. But for the Rangers, especially right now, the fact that they are making quick work so far of their early opponents is huge. And last thing I'll say, I know this isn't a hockey podcast, but last thing I'll say is that Carolina Hurricanes wearing those black and red jerseys, like the teams with the better uniforms won tonight. Am I right? Like, those are hideous jerseys, and the Rangers are skating out there in those whites, and they deserve to win based on how they looked compared to the Hurricanes alone. So that's my hockey tangent for the evening there. Let's see. Hunter says he doesn't mind the signing of Robinson, but it takes a possible spot from a young kid like Ford Wheaton. Yeah, you would hope not. But that's why I say, Hunter, is like Joe Shane likes to say everyone should be patient and this is a rebuild. But if this is a compete now, build for tomorrow team, and there's a huge emphasis on that build for tomorrow element, you're not signing who is going to be Allen Robinson, a 31-year-old receiver in September, in expense of like a talented young player you're trying to develop, unless there's pressure on you to win. But that's what it is, right? D-Kit says, I jinxed the Rangers. I did not. They won, D-Kit. So I'm in the clear. Let's see. Panarin, the bread man. Simeon says Tommy should be in Canada getting reps. That's right. Hunter says, need a fourth QB to throw to all the 40 wide receivers we have on the roster. That's funny. Michael says, what a goal by the bread man. Deflect a pass between his legs and into the goal. Oh, man. I got to go watch that as soon as I'm off of this. Brett, what's going on? Brett had my back. One of the guys in the comments of my shorts on YouTube, because my YouTube short on Al Robinson signing, the image that freezes when you select the thumbnail has me looking all kinds of crazy. And one guy said, oh, they did you wrong or something. And one guy followed up and said, you film yourself? Why do you film yourself, Pat? And Brett basically came in and was like, he's Pat. He can do whatever he wants. Leave him alone. Something like that. I appreciate that. Authentic, my man. Authentic is sharing the live chats on X, retweeting so everybody sees it. Authentic, really appreciate you. Looking forward to collabing in the future. By the way, guys, I am planning on, this is not a definite, but I am planning on going to the celebrity softball game or charity softball game with all the Rangers that LPG and Dexter Lawrence are putting on. So if you guys are planning on being there, maybe we'll try to meet up. Maybe I'll schedule like a meetup time or a place, and we can chat a little bit, but really appreciate you guys. David says, last summer, they weren't ready to play. 40-0 can't happen again. 40-0 can't happen again like the Cowboys game. Do you think camp will be different? Was the Club Med camp a source of strife between Wink and Daboll? David, great comment and question. This is a point that I don't think gets discussed enough as far as in coverage of the team. But here's the story, David. So there was some friction. Like Joe Judge did things more grueling than a lot of people wanted to see. But the Giants were healthier in that program. And, the Giants' bodies, the players' bodies were not ready to play a football game last year. The first season that Daboll and Shane came in, they made it this Club Med type camp, and it was received very well by the players who were tired of the grueling training camps and work under Judge. And so, of course, that was a good way for Daboll to cull support from players who felt like finally somebody who listens to us, right? But doing that in the second year, going into year two, was a big mistake. It wasn't just Shane and Daboll. It's also the Giants' medical and training staff, because they have a loud voice in the room when it comes to that. So there was friction with Judge and those suggestions when he was here. And then Shane and Daboll are not only implementing a certain thing, but also enabling and taking the advice of a training staff that's looking at certain points to dial it back, give guys days off, manage those things in a very close and kind of, for lack of a better term, micromanaging type way. And so this is a problem with the Giants as far as deciding internally what is responsible for injuries and what is responsible for defeats. There's too much political finger pointing, and there's not enough. Maybe we're not preparing our team well, right? And David, I know that might sound like too direct and simple, but I do believe that the Giants, as a team that now, hasn't won the NFC East in forever, has made the playoffs once since 2016, is a team that is projecting to have a number, let's say a top 5 pick next year, unless they exceed expectations, right? Because the Vegas over under for wins right now is 6.5. They were 6-11 last year. So that essentially is telling you that Vegas thinks they're going to win 6 or 7 games, right? And so I think the bottom line, David, is that what you pointed out needs to change, but we need to start watching it right from the get-go if it actually is going to. And I think rookie minicamp is not too early to watch that. Like for me, David, I know that at this stage of the offseason, there's only a certain amount that you can do with players, okay? But for me, this rookie class has at least 2 players in Tyler Nubin, the second-round pick, and obviously Neighbors, the first-round pick, who need to be big factors for this Giants team to be relevant and competitive. And so you can't start with kid gloves with these guys, in my opinion. So I think that's a good time to start talking about that is right now. Bill says, "Thank you, Pat. That's so damn nice of you to plug your podcast." Yeah, hey man, you're here all the time, supporting me, supporting what we're doing here, helping drive the conversation. Thank you, and thank you for the super sticker there. I appreciate you. But yeah, everybody go watch Bill's content. Tuto always here supporting. He says, "Massive salutes and respects to Pat with his screwball authentic and Mark Thompson and all diehard Giants fans across the pond. Giants 11-6 next season. We say forget about it." Tuto, cheers to you. Thank you for the super chat, man. I gotta buy Tuto a lot of beers, I'll tell you that, or a lot of sodas. You know what I mean? I gotta buy Tuto a cold one sometime. Looking forward maybe to hanging out in Princeton one of these days when you're back here, not training with the boys over there in Scotland, you know? But Tuto, thank you so much as always as well. Simeon says, if Rourke, the quarterback, does not have more than 1 season and was limited, then he should be eligible to participate in rookie minicamp. Yeah, I think he is, Simeon. I just didn't want to say like definitively he was, but I do believe he is and will be as we sit here today on May 9th, going into the 10th and 11th when they'll be on the field. Elite 4 Master Will says, kicker question. What's going on with Graham Gano? I know he's kicking field goals now down in he lives in North Carolina, and like in the off season, that's where he has his home. And Graham, I know, is on the field kicking field goals now. He is rehabbing from that late season surgery, but the fact that he's already kicking the ball through the uprights, I think, is a good sign. And Elite, I would not read anything into like where he is or anything like that. I mean, the Giants with Graham over these last several years, they handle him this way. They handle him the way that you do with anybody who you know is reliable. They leave him alone. They let him do what he needs to do to be ready so he can bang field goals through the uprights and bang extra points through the uprights when it's time in week 1, week 2, and in the fall. I guess what I would say is, if he looks like he's not able to physically do it at a certain point, that's a concern. But I would judge him differently when you guys are watching reports coming out of camp and this and that than you judge other players who, let's say, people report are not at this camp or not at this practice, right? It's not the same thing for Graham, and you shouldn't judge it that way. And I would say if you see someone telling you to judge it that way, you should ignore that. Kyle says, any update on Darren Waller? Is there a benefit to placing him as a post-June 1 cut? Can you shed any light on what the Giants would do with that cap space if he retires? So, Kyle, yes, you can save more cap space by making a player such as Waller a post-June 1 cut versus pre. Now, every team is allotted 2 post-June 1 cuts per year. So you can't do any more than 2. So there are none that I know of the Giants at the moment. So if they haven't allotted or used either or both of those post-June 1 cuts, then you can use that on Darren Waller if and when he retires. He does not need to wait to retire in June for that to kick in, though. I mean, at least based on sources I've talked to, checked in on that, because it's essentially functions cap-wise like a cut. So, think about the fact that like Jason Kelce with Philadelphia when he retired, he retired then, but the Eagles technically could wait for a player who retired in, March or April. They could technically make that player a post June 1st cut and save more salary cap space, that way. So it doesn't have to physically happen after June 1st. For you to make that savings. Now, as far as Waller's decision, according to overthecap.com, which, guys, I'm just telling you, I know there's other sites out there. Over the Cap is the site. Trust me. They have all the information. They get it, firsthand, and they're the one I use. And the people who run it and are behind it and involved with it are, um, you know, they would probably reject me calling them geniuses, but they are forward thinking, intelligent, and very savvy individuals. So that, just to plug that there. But so Darren Waller, for example, he saves the Giants $6.7 million as a pre-June 1 cut, and the Giants would have to eat $7.3 million as a pre-June cut. Now, as a post-June, instead of saving 6.7 million, the Giants would save 11.6 million. So that's the difference. So that was what, about $4 million extra dollars that they would get as a post June 1 for Darren Waller there. Now, that seems like the obvious route for the Giants to go. And as far as how they use it, I mean, I think you can tell based on the signings they've been making that even though they can play around with money and push money into the future on certain contracts, I think it's very clear that all of these veteran salary benefit contracts, these low-level minimum deals that are veteran salary benefit in order to even lower the cap further to help fit these players under, I think it shows you where the Giants are financially. Remember, guys, they also need to, be signing this draft class, right? And then you do need to have some money to operate when you're going into the season, ideally, right? Different teams are comfortable with different levels, but you don't want to go into the season up against it, needing to make certain moves every single week, like Joe Shane was doing in his first year, just to get to the end of the season, right? All right. Justin says, "Hey, Pat, what are your thoughts on possible league discipline for Malik Neighbors in regards to his bet with Jaden Daniels?" Great show as always. Justin, thank you. I think I haven't heard that the NFL would be looking into disciplining him there. Nothing has come across my desk as far as I will say this. When I heard him say that on the podcast, my ears went like, whoa, did he just say that out loud? That they bet, what was it, 10 grand? And I remember I wrote the headline on it because I thought that really stood out. It was very interesting. And I saw what Jaden Daniels said, something like he wasn't supposed to say that out loud or publicly. I thought that was funny. I think, listen, the NFL, the amount they market and promote this gambling now to fans, and also the way that Neighbors is saying out loud that he and Daniels are essentially gambling on themselves to have great seasons, right? So I don't necessarily think it has nothing to do with win totals. It has nothing to do with anything that they would be interested in negatively affecting. You know what I mean? If anything, it just sounds like two former teammates talking trash, right? I do think, though, it's something that goes in the file that catches people's ear, that becomes something that's like, okay, maybe we'll keep an eye on this down the road, right? And I'm sure that the Giants would prefer that Malik Neighbors does not say things like that out loud. I would say that. What you just explained about the ideal usage of Simmons is what good coaches do with all their players. Popped in to hit the like. Cheers, dude. Where are my entertainers? Thank you. Yes, you're right. That is what all coaches should do, but that's not what all coaches do, right? But that's a really good point, entertainers. Thank you for hitting the like. Thank you for jumping in, man. I know it's late. Appreciate you. Will says our D-line is going to be the best unit this year. They're going to have to carry. They are going to have to carry the team. That's right. And that's why I think, Kayvon Thibodeau is really a player to watch. Burns obviously has a lot to do to live up to that contract. Dex, of course, is going to carry the load on the interior, but Kayvon is really the player that you want to see kind of continue to ascend, match those sack totals with that strong all-around game, be in fantastic shape to finish these games with a bang. And that's gonna have to carry the Giants. You're right. Antonio says Akello Witherspoon, who was with the Rams last year, I believe, as a corner free agent signing makes so much sense. That is a player who sticks out as far as what could be affordable, and also a guy who played a lot last season and could factor in and compete. The one thing, Antonio, right now with all of these veterans is that, like a guy like Stephon Gilmore still out there, right? A lot of these guys, if they are a coveted player who is kind of waiting to pick his spot, they are normally, and I don't mean this as a dig to the Giants, but they are normally waiting on teams who are competitive and who are giving them a chance to play in the playoffs, because from their standpoint, they're thinking, okay, I know I'm older, so I'll make a little money, but not as much money as I used to when I was playing at my top level. So let me kind of complement that or even offset that, the fact that I'm not making the top dollar I used to, but I'm making some good coin with the fact that I'm playing on a team that could go deep, that could get some playoff money, get more exposure, get a better contract next year. So that's what the Giants are working against when you talk about trying to get a corner who has experience and could be talented and help a team, right? Allen Robinson's a good example of a player who you would think, okay, well, what does he see here? But also he's more of like in the Jalen Mills mold, right? Like Jalen Mills, love him as a player. Again, supposed to be a great guy, great locker room guy, played on a Patriots defense that was really good last year, but is not the player he was 3-4 years ago. But he's here playing with the Giants. They gave him an opportunity. He has an opportunity to play a fairly prominent role. And so I see Robinson more as like a Jalen Mills of the Giants offense right now, if that makes sense. Now, would Witherspoon be an A-lister, for the Giants? I'm not saying that, but is he a good enough player that teams who need a corner who are also good teams come calling, right? Is he going to choose the Giants over them? That's something to ask yourself. Elite for Master Will says, what do you think about the retired numbers, and do you feel the Giants should unretire some? To me, and no disrespect to the military, but the retired numbers should be unretired, 32 and 50. Elite, I think a retired number is a retired number. I know we've just gotten to the point where we've been playing long enough in these leagues where it's starting to become a question and an issue, right, when it comes to what guys want to wear. But to me, if you retire a number, you're honoring that person and player's legacy, and I have no problem with it, even if there's a lot of them. I am one of those people, though, who has high criteria for whether it's retiring a number or inducting someone into the Hall of Fame. Like I think it should be a strong, a difficult to reach and almost insurmountable criteria to get to those things. So Mark says, Pat, missed a few shows. Hey, Pat, missed a few shows. I believe I heard Shane refer to Simmons as a safety unprompted. Doesn't that suggest that is where he will play? So Mark, he is normally deployed as like a third safety, but he plays a lot of the time in the box where an outside linebacker plays. Does that make sense? So call him what you want, but when I was asked earlier about just play him at safety, that was a conversation and a comment about why don't we just play him in deep half, right? Like something like that, like play him deep safety, play him as a strong safety where he's starting deeper, right? Like they just drafted a safety because they didn't have another safety next to Jason Pinnock that they trusted to start, right? So you're not drafting Tyler Nubin if Isaiah Simmons is playing there. But Mark, to your point, and to your question, Simmons playing at various spots on the line, blitzing off the edge, playing in the box, and running with that running back in man-to-man coverage as a safety, playing man-to-man against the running back, right? Or playing in that kind of second level and trying to help fit the runs, especially on the outside, kind of using that speed to get around the edge. Like some of those plays, he's technically a linebacker. Some of those plays, he's technically a safety, but he's playing in a linebacker position, if that makes sense. Mark says, Allen Robinson is washed. I don't expect much, but I do agree his veteran presence could be helpful if Slayton is not around. Antonio says, do you expect the Giants to have some veteran guys in for tomorrow's rookie minicamp for workouts? No, I do not. I mean, there will be guys around the building, like working out, doing some things. You usually don't see that, though, because this is a chance for a lot of tryout guys and a lot of undrafted free agents, not to mention the rookie class, to be on the field. And there's people out there competing for jobs. So that's usually what you're seeing more than anything. Hunter says Waller needs to get his head out of his where. All he's doing now is being a crappy coworker. I get if you want to retire, but don't drag it all year, hurting us by replacing his money elsewhere. Very strange situation, Hunter. Very strange situation. And we will be talking about Brian Dable, to Brian Dable about that imminently. This for Vegan says still live. Couldn't listen earlier. Don't mind me if I start at the beginning. All good, Vegan. Appreciate you being here. Mark says Robinson is a contested catch guy. Hodgins, while being a big guy, isn't and is a savvy route runner. No, Robinson can win at the point, but very good route runner as well. After the Giants passed on Michael Penix Jr., I tuned the draft out, says Simeon. Interesting. Why waste money and roster spot on wide receiver when we need a CB2? Do you really believe on Flott or McLeod on the outside? I remember the last video you said, I believe you said Flott. Correct me if I'm wrong, Pat. Kyler, thank you. Good question. Good point. I agree. It was a little surprising seeing a wide receiver versus a corner when it comes to this type of signing here. Corner CB2 definitely made more sense. I do think Neighbors is a factor. 20 years old. You don't really have many veterans in that room. I do think that's a thing. Flott or McLeod. Personally, I think the best version of the Giants secondary, it certainly has Flott on the field. I think it has Flott probably in the slot. And then either McLeod balls out on the outside and wins that job, or there's somebody else you're bringing in to compete and win that job. If Flott wins the outside, great. Who's playing the slot, though? Is it Drew Phillips? I mean, I know they like him, but being a third round, listen, I'm not saying he's a good player, right? But being a rookie third round slot corner and coming in and jumping in and facing up man-to-man against CeeDee Lamb in week 1, that's just not a recipe for success, for anybody. I'm not saying he couldn't handle some snaps, but to me, I would rather see Flott on the inside and a strong solution on the outside rather than Flott outside, and then I'm not sure who on the inside. I mean, Jalen Mills has some slot corner flex, right? I know you have Darnay competing as well, but the Giants just in a lot of places just seem to be a body or two short. You know what I mean? Jacob says, Pat, only thing came out was FaceTime call for Neighbors, not draft call. Right, exactly. Yeah, but the Neighbors call came out really late. Hunter says, shout out to hockey players, badass dudes, broken bones, teeth, acting like it's a paper cut. That's right. Luann, what's going on? Good to see you. Simeon says, Pat, do you bet based on the ugliest hockey jersey? No, but that's a really good idea. Sometimes, Simeon, I look at a result or as it's coming down the pike, right? Like, let's say it's a fourth quarter or it's the second half of a college game, and I see the one team pulling away, and then I look at there was some team in the NBA recently where I saw the highlights, and as the other team was pulling away, I looked at the one, I can't remember who it was the Suns or something, whatever. But I looked at it and I said, of course they lost. Look at those uniforms. They're hideous. I'm a big believer in stop wearing that trash. You're not going to win. Luann says, my Giants always sign bargain basement players. Hunter says, wish I was closer to you. I would pull up to that softball game, no doubt. Luann, no, the schedule did not come out today. We are sitting here, everybody, on May 9th. The schedule is now supposed to come out on May 15th. So that's a Wednesday. The schedule release is that evening. And I will say this. The NFL typically announces the international games much earlier. So it could be a day earlier. It could be several days earlier. So 2 years ago, they announced them like a week earlier. Okay. We're obviously within a week now. So it could be any time. But last year in 2023, the NFL announced the international games the day before the full schedule release. So I think for looking at the Germany option and the possibility of the Giants playing in Munich against the Panthers, I think that Tuesday, May 14th is probably going to be the day we find out about that. But be on alert from now on. Chronicle says he will be at the softball game, Pat. Let me know. We need a pick and a meetup, no doubt. No doubt. You know what, guys? Here's what I'll do. When I am there, I will put on my Twitter account or on my X account, at a certain point when I'm available, I'll just say, where I am and people can come over and say hi. Let's see. Did I say the Rangers at the softball game? Still got that hockey in me. Hunter says also, I think corners rankings of quarterbacks was horse crap. Danny is not the worst starter in the NFL. Sure, 20s, yeah, not 30s. Players don't respect Daniel in a large part, like a large majority of the NFL doesn't respect Daniel as a quarterback. It's unbelievable. Joe says our man Tuto has arrived. That's right. Bill says that's not my show, but I helped get Justin Pugh on the show this time. All right, respect. Terry says, Pat, who do you think is the training camp sleeper? Okay. That's a good question. I think Devin Singletary and somebody at the running back position will probably be a guy that catches people's eye. So whether it's Singletary, whether it's Tyrone Tracy, the draft pick, even like I remember last year, here's another thing I thought, guys, and I'm not reporting this. We're just talking, right? Wan'Dale Robinson last year in camp and some practices was taking a good amount of handoffs at times, like with the running backs, like when they were doing the mesh drills as they warmed up in individuals. And he really never did it and lined up in the backfield when it came to the games. But in college, he did that in an earlier football life. And, when I saw Robinson sign today at receiver, I thought, oh, yeah, that could be a way, like if he really does show well and he makes the team and then you have him in the slot and Wan'Dale in the slot too, but then Wan'Dale can kick into the backfield and be kind of, jet sweeping, and maybe you're even using him as a running back at times. So those are the things I look at, but definitely a running back, because obviously the Giants and the fan base too, everybody's going to be looking for how do we replace Saquon? How do we replace that production? Even though we're going to hopefully a more pass happy attack and, more down the field throws, who's running the ball for us? Who looks good? Like Singletary's a good player. He's a good 3-down player. And so I think people will like him. We'll see what it means for the offense come the regular season, him being the main guy there. But listen, he was a good player. He is a good player. He was a good player on a playoff team last year. So I'll go with Devin Singletary. Antonio says, as of today, Jordan Phillips will be the starting D tackle next to Dexter Lawrence. Do you think that will be the case come week 1? I think Phillips will be there in like a rotation. You got Nacho, you got Phillips, you got some of the young guys. I mean, you need young blood there, though. You need somebody young to step in there and play for sure. So I think that's another example. You look at Allen Robinson, you look at Jalen Mills, you look at Jordan Phillips. Like these are guys who are all here to help out in a complementary way, right? They're not expected to carry the load necessarily at their respective positions. Hunter says, if we cut Waller, we should bring a vet tight end, Tanyan or something like that. Yeah, Tanyan has been reliable, as Joe said. Yeah, Logan Thomas, I always feel like he always looks like he's about to have an enormous game and then either gets hurt or drops passes. But certainly, I'll tell you what, when he's on, like he is a dangerous looking weapon on the field for sure. Definitely plays well in spurts. No Mets, no Nets, no Jets. What's going on? Welcome back. G-Men says, Pat, who do you project to play left guard, Stinney or Illuminor? Maybe one more free agent signing like a Dalton Reisner. No, I think it's probably going to be Stinney because, listen, even though Evan Neal is getting every chance to be the right tackle, I do think there's a really strong chance that their starting 5 at the beginning of the year is from left to right. Thomas, left tackle, Stinney, left guard, JMS center, John Runyon Jr., right guard, Jermaine Illuminor, right tackle. Now, if Evan Neal plays so well that he wins and is the starting right tackle out of the gate, then yes, it's possible Illuminor ends up being the left guard, but certainly Stinney is here because that's what he plays, that's what he is, that's his position. He's a guy who's played in the Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, and Illuminor also. I'm interested to see. There's so much conversation about moving. Do we move these guys all around the line? Cross train them at guard and tackle. The Giants got themselves in trouble by cross-training guys and rotating guys in and out too much, even just in that guard competition with the 3 guys last year. Really backfired, was poor coaching, frankly. And so I don't think you want to screw with that too much. You want to work guys in and out, but you don't want to screw with it either. So I do think it's going to be Stinnie. Justin said, Pat, what do you know about the future role of Chris Snee in the Giants organization? Definitely, Justin, that he's here to scout and to especially help scout offensive linemen. They're going to lean on his expertise there, as obviously his contacts in college already from having worked there with the Boston College Eagles. The long term, part of me has always believed that eventually when Eli Manning gets bored of conquering every other venture he ever does, is going to step into some sort of personnel capacity. He has said that he doesn't think it's on the table for him, so that's possible too. But certainly if Eli gets involved in that kind of thing, then I think obviously Snee's role would only increase. But it wouldn't be required for Eli to get involved either. I think Chris is a smart person. He's a respected person, high character. Once a Giant, always a Giant. Tom Coughlin's nephew, et cetera, or son-in-law, not nephew, son-in-law. So, I think all of those things point to somebody who belongs in the Giants organization. And Chris Snee has been trying to get back into the Giants organization in this capacity. He should have been here several years ago. Initial efforts were rebuffed, but now welcome back, and great to have him back for sure. I can tell you this too. What did Chris say to me? I didn't put this in the paper, but Chris said the other day when he came back to the Giants, he said, "I'm excited to be back in the building." So that was good to hear. Steven says, Pat, you mentioned last stream you saw guys have really good springs and summers outperforming starters, like Webb outperforming Eli. Ever see that and it not translate to the season? Well, more often it's just like you see it, and then the guys still don't win the jobs because they're not paid more, or they're not supposed to be the starting quarterback or the starting wide receiver, and so they fall off. I will say, Steven, that there is something you have to be careful of when it comes to, overestimating what guys do in certain times of the off season. So, for example, over the course of the years I've been covering the team, you always have like a Giants tight end, an undrafted rookie, or think of Trey Hawkins last year as a good example. Trey Hawkins looking like a lockdown corner as a 6th round pick, covering the Giants receivers in training camp last summer. And then he gets into the regular season and you think, whoa, he's not ready to play at this level, right? I think that's maybe a good example of what you're asking about. Hawkins last year. There were even some people last year who were covering the Giants who were telling the fans that Jordan Riley was like a rising star who was going to be a standout for the Giants last year. No idea what they were watching. Obviously, a late round pick who's a developing player there. But Hawkins is a good example of that, Steven. And I'm trying to think of who else. I think I always, what stands out to me too is like Colin Johnson when he had his last training camp here, where he was essentially the best receiver on the team for 2 weeks straight. And then I think tore his Achilles, right? Those things are always awful to see, where it's not going to translate to the regular season. You think about what could have been. That's what stands out. I think most recently is the Hawkins example. I'm trying to think of more. Brett says Jalen Mills better break out that blue hair dye. I like it. Yeah, no doubt. Bill says, I kind of miss Davis Webb. He did so much homework for the QB room on the back end, wasn't going to start, so he made himself useful in other ways. Yep. Yeah, really good player, too. Could have had a different career if some things went a little differently. Speaking of retired numbers and what not, is Eli Manning Hall of Fame eligible next year? Oh, yes, I think it's next year. I believe so. Off the top of my head, yes, I believe so. And Bill answers that yes, 2025. Yeah. And we'll do a whole episodes on this, but my take on Eli is he's going to get in the Hall of Fame. I do not think his career is first ballot Hall of Fame worthy, like from start to finish, the whole book. But obviously, he was part of the two of the greatest Super Bowl runs and some of the greatest plays of all time, and is ultimately clutch. But that's just my take. D Kit, what's going on, man? He says, "How's it going, Pat? I'm concerned about the corner situation. Not going to lie. Any off the radar scuttlebutt that you want to share?" D-Kit, I'm trying to get to the bottom of what's going on, or if nothing really is going on here with the Giants. A lot of tight lips right now on this subject. I would say I do think they're trying to give Nick and Cordell and the guys in the building a shot to compete here and have a spring and show them what they've got. I do think, though, D-Kit, that you can tell, listen, they're bargain hunting, as Luann said earlier. I think that the way they've been behaving recently and adding kind of, supplementary pieces on bargain deals is what to look for if they feel like they need it. So, sorry, I don't have more for you there, D-Kit. Thanks for the super chat there. I'm digging, though. I promise you that. And when I have it, I'll get it to you. I'll tell you. Let's see. What we got here? Brett says, cut Waller and get another lineman. As I like to say, from your lips to God's ears, Brett. Jacob says, Pat, thank you so much for all your hard work. You're a real G for doing this. Jacob, thank you always for being here, man. Did you just leak the week 1 schedule, Pat? The Cowboys, Hunter says. No. That obviously we know that tends to happen a lot. I will say this. This is secondhand information. I heard that the Giants had been lobbying the NFL for a week 1 home game. Now, I will say this before anybody aggregates that or anything. I know of plenty of cases where the Giants lobbied the NFL for certain things with their schedule, and the NFL said, that's great, and then ignored it and did the opposite, right? So, just because the Giants or the Eagles or the Cowboys or the Commanders or whatever team asks the NFL to do something or lobbies for something in the schedule doesn't mean they're going to get it. But I did hear secondhand that the Giants had been trying to get the NFL to schedule them for a home game in week 1. So we'll see. Brett says Flott shut down AJ Brown. Flott's coming on, was developing strong last year. Good developing player right now. Timothy says, Pat, which opponent will the Giants face in week 1 of the NFL of the 2024 season? I don't know yet, Timothy. I wish I did. Who would you guys want to see them play in week 1? Especially if it's one of their home games. Who would you like to see? Simeon says Verizon is sponsoring the release of the schedule on May 15th. That's right. Michael says, I'm old enough to remember the San Diego all brown uniforms. They look like tall Frankfurters. Exactly. The Padres. Yep. Let's see. Steven doesn't want the boys again in week 1. What position group can least afford an injury to a starter, said Authentic. Authentic, definitely the offensive line, I think. I believe that you could say the D-line, but hopefully with 3 guys who are capable of making big splash plays there, you still have enough what you hope to be A-list talent there to compensate for losing one of them for a game or 2. I think the Giants offensive line, though, it's not fixed, guys, right? I think we all agree that it looks better, but we're all in a wait and see mode, right? And certainly, even if everything works out optimally with all these players, you're still, and this is any offensive line in the NFL a lot of the times, often you're still one injury away from a little bit of panic, a little bit of concern, a little bit of worry, maybe moving guys out of position, that kind of thing. Now, there are NFL teams who overcome injuries to an offensive line with how their quarterback throws downfield, how their offense operates, how they can get the ball out quickly, that kind of thing. The Giants haven't proven to be able to overcome those things, though. So, Authentic, I do think that's one. Though you could easily make an argument that losing Deonte Banks at corner could be devastating. I mean, certainly Bobby Okereke as a linebacker, like you can't operate without him on the field with this defense for sure. There are some, I would say any of those positions, D tackle, linebacker, positions where the Giants have a clear number one and everybody else is at a way different level. Those are obviously costly concerns when you have injuries. But, I do think the offensive line still, just because of how they need everything to go right up front there. Bangkok Baseball says, Talkin Ball, best Giants show out there. FYI, guys, I know I've told you this already, but I got swag coming. I got Talkin Ball swag coming that you can purchase on the YouTube channel. And that's going to be open. I'm going to open the shop there, and we're going to get some swag going there. We're going to get some fresh Talkin Ball logos. And if you're interested in purchasing and sporting the swag, we will have it coming to you, I promise. That'll be here sooner rather than later. And just a reminder to anybody who's new, you can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, on audio if you don't watch these live on YouTube. But we do YouTube live chats, Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard every Monday and Thursday at 9 o'clock. Pushed it a little later tonight because of the Rangers-Canes. It was great action watching that. I can't wait, frankly, to go watch the Breadman, Artemi Panarin's game winner in OT to go up 3-0 in the series. But when you're here, we ask that you hit that like button if you enjoy what we're doing. That helps drive traffic and bring more Giants fans here. It recommends it to the Giants fans on YouTube who haven't heard about us or seen it yet. And it helps kind of encourage dialogue, grow the community. Really appreciate that. If you want your comment or question answered quicker or earlier and you want to support the chat differently or financially, you can purchase a super chat or a super sticker, elevate it to the top of the chat. So I will address or answer that question first. Really appreciate all of you guys who have weighed in tonight with those super chats and super stickers and that support for the channel. Not mandatory, obviously, but really appreciate those who have and everybody who is here. I'm the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. So you can follow me on New York Daily News website, nydailynews.com/sports, or on X, P Leonard NYDN. And my handle everywhere else is PL on NFL. That is YouTube, TikTok, Threads, Instagram, all those. All right. Brett says Belton is a sleeper, black belt samurai. Bangkok says, Pat, would you have rather kept Sterling Shepard rather than signing Allen Robinson? I think after the way they handled the Saquon Barkley situation, having Shep on the team, I think it was either all or nothing there. Probably those are close friends, guys who kind of have seen it played out the string with what the Giants are as far as a business. And clearly the writing was more than on the wall for Shepard last year from the organization. I do think, listen, the question earlier about guys cooking and then it not translating. I mean, Shepard was cooking guys all through training camp last year and then still couldn't find his way onto the field for the Giants offense. So he just wasn't a favorite. Hunter says we should bring back Nick Gates. Always need brutes. Fans loved him too. I totally agree with you, Hunter. I don't think that would be completely far-fetched and out of the question either. If this running attack is mediocre and the line is bad, Malik Neighbors doubled and maybe tripled. Robinson is washed. Hyatt can't run routes. Offense will have a tough year. H5000. Wow. Yeah, listen, I think H5000, even though, that is an extremely critical and pessimistic view, I don't think is out of the question that could be a reality, what he just painted, that picture. This is why guys have to step up. Hyatt has to take a step. You sign Allen Robinson, he needs to be more than what he's been the last 3 years. Malik Neighbors, double, triple, whatever. He's a 20-year-old, right? There's going to be a lot on his shoulders. I think just operating at a functionally high level is going to be a challenge for a guy in the position with all the pressure on his shoulders like him. So yes, the line, the quarterbacks, the players' health, it all factors in. It's going to take a lot for them to improve dramatically this year. Pat, when is the earliest the O-line can start working together? Do they like what quarterbacks and wide receivers do? They do like what the quarterbacks and wide receivers do off-site training? Yes, they do. They'll also like take trips together. I mean, it's not always just the linemen. Sometimes the quarterbacks and the skill players are involved as well. But yes, they do work together. They're allowed to work out together on their own whenever they want. As far as working with the Giants, these players have been in the facility, but as far as putting on pads and really doing real football, this is obviously governed and reduced more than it has been in the past years. So you're doing a lot of what you hope is, communication practice. So looking it over, standing out there on the field, making calls, making checks, talking to each other, being able to stand next to the guy that you're going to be playing next to and saying, here's how I would call that. Here's how I would react. Okay, how would we pick up this stunt, et cetera, right? That's what you're doing at this point. Steven says, Pat, Giants have big history of injuries, and now with the misdiagnosis of Evan Neal, how concerning should this be with the medical staff and poor injury history? Huge concern, Steven. Huge concern. Again, like I said, not covered or talked about enough, but the Giants' inability to keep guys healthy and instances like that where your right tackle maybe has a chance to get back on the field but doesn't because he was misdiagnosed with an ankle injury and then trained based on having the injury that they thought he had, but he didn't. That's a major concern, no doubt. If you read and follow my coverage, Steven, too, I will stay on that as a key element of what needs to change with the Giants. Pat, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is Bill Belichick being the head coach if Dable has another year like last season? I would say a 7 or a 7.5, Justin. The reason it's not a 10 there is because I think if it's between the Cowboys and the Giants, there's just a chance that if this Giant season goes badly enough that they need a new head coach, then the roster and the lack of talent plus where the franchise is, it might end up being a way more attractive job in Dallas. And Dallas could just end up with a new head coach because they don't get the NFC title game, right? They're going to still be a good team and just not get a good enough coach or need a new coach because McCarthy couldn't get him over the hump because he's already been there, right? So I do think, though, if the Giants struggle this year, Dable will be out. And then it's just a question of Shane, and then you have to look at Belichick, and certainly they will be an option. All right, let's see. Simeon says, Pat, keep your eye on John Giles in rookie camp. I think he can make the club on special teams. He's a wide receiver, everybody. Thanks for another good show. You got it, Simeon. I will keep an eye on him. Thank you. Looking forward to bring you guys a lot of kind of notes and analysis from watching these guys in person. Joey B. Comedy's here. What's up, Joey? He says, what did I miss? I just got here. You missed a lot, Joe, if you just got here. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for being here as always. I was going to hold off till after the Ranger-Canes game, and then that went into overtime. So then I missed the Breadman's game winner just to try to bring my insight on the Giants to you all. But thank you so much for being so dedicated, all of you. Really appreciate you. Hunter says, I think the key to a good season is not starting against the Cowboys. Bad loss could start the downfall kind of quickly this year. Worst team possible. Joey B says, Pat, you coming to the softball game? Should I bring cigars? I am planning on coming to the softball game. As long as nothing crazy on the personal side gets in the way, I don't think I have anything preventing me from being there. So I am planning on going. Maybe there with some family. So I don't know how much I'll be able to hang out, Joe. But I'm going to try to hang out as much as I can. So we'll see. Yes, you should bring cigars either way. We'll try to make it work. D-Kit wants the Panthers the first week. Well, if it's in Munich, it's not going to happen, though. But I hear you, D-Kit. At this moment, I don't know what number Neighbors is going to get. We'll probably see at rookie minicamp. John Ray wants Washington in week 1 if he can help it. I kind of agree with that. Big Dash wants Pittsburgh in week 1. You want Pittsburgh in week 1? Like you want to play them in week 1, Big Dash? Really? Yeah, Big Dash. I think Big Dash I think I saw you posting something on X as well. You got some content coming up, right, Big Dash? Hold on. There was something you said on X that caught my eye. Let's see. What did you say that caught my eye? I do not remember. Oh, right. Your YouTube video on how to use Malik Neighbors. Big Dash did a video on his YouTube channel. So you see him, Big Dash knows. He did a video on his YouTube channel and it says how to use Malik Neighbors. So he's telling you how he thinks the Giants should use their number 6 overall pick. So as I'm recommending content, I know I recommended New York Revival with Bill was pushing that with Justin Pugh. Go watch Big Dash's video as well. I saw that today. It actually crossed my recommended videos on YouTube. I haven't gotten to watch it yet, Big Dash, but I am going to check it out, and I think all of you should check it out as well because that is going to be a huge issue and discussion point is how does Neighbors get used? How can you maximize that talent, right? Big Dash, thanks for being here as always. Hunter says he wants the Panthers 100% week 1. Could get some mojo going. So would you trade a Germany trip for that game to be in Carolina and to play them on the road in Carolina and in week 1? D-Kid says, linebacker is the group we can't afford an injury, specifically Bobby O. Yeah, that's fair. Deilla says, what's going on, Pat, and everyone in the chat? Deilla, my man. Brett says, we play the Chiefs, Bills, or Niners. Let's see. All right, so Brett, what are you talking about? Chiefs, Bills, or Niners? Are those teams on? I don't think any of those teams are on the Giants schedule, are they? What do you mean? OG says, great content, Pat. Appreciate you, OG. Thank you. Hunter says, losing Andrew Thomas and Dexter would kill us quick. Yeah, no doubt. Joey B says, authentic. Keep up the great work. Love your Twitter and content, bro. Look forward to meeting you soon and chopping it up. No doubt, man. Authentic's the man. Do the OGs of the show get personalized swags? Says Joey B. Great question. Great question. Maybe you get the first. Maybe you get the first alert of the drop. We'll see. If the line is horrible up until week 4, I'm out on everybody, says Brett. Well, Brett, you make a really good point here, which is, and this is something we're going to talk a lot about as the season gets closer, depending on how the team looks in camp. But you guys know this is true. This team cannot, and we all know that nowadays, because of how little time these teams can actually practice together in the offseason, the spring, a lot of times now they say the first 4 weeks of the NFL regular season, it's like a ramp up of the end of the preseason for teams to get into form. The Giants can't afford to do that. They have to be ready right from the go, right? So that's something to remember. And I think Brett makes a really good point. You have to have high expectations of this team immediately because that's what they need to have the kind of season that is going to prevent people from getting fired. Hunter says merch would be great for this show. Oh yeah, Hunter, let's go. I know you're in. Big Dash says, I missed your Allen Robinson take. Yeah, essentially, Big Dash, I think he is here. Not only does he have the most pedigree in this wide receiver room immediately, and I know he hasn't done it in a while, but he does come with pedigree you have to respect and give him a chance. I do think he is a Paris Campbell type. You look at last year, and they tried to get lightning in a bottle with Paris Campbell, gave him more of a deal with incentive-based than they did this year with Allen Robinson on a VSB, reportedly, according to Josina Anderson. But similar idea, I think, of trying to get a veteran who you feel like is trustworthy and can kind of pop on catch and run, make plays for you, and be a threat and a trusted source of kind of like offense running your playbook, essentially a guy you put on the field and you know what you're getting. But Big Dash, my main take is that I think a complementary piece and a primary complementary piece of his signing, in my opinion, because this did surprise people around the league saying like, wait a second, they got 1,000 guys in the receiver room. What is this? And I think what it really points to is Malik Neighbors is 20 years old. Darius Slayton's not around. I do think it will help them, and they need a guy like Robinson to help shepherd a player like Neighbors into here's how you conduct yourself in the building. Here's how you operate as a wide receiver in the NFL. Here's what you don't do. Here's what you don't say. Here's how I, and then maybe you're not always talking. Maybe you're just doing it and you're setting an example. It's a lead by example idea, right? I do think that if you're the Giants making this signing, it would be impossible for it not to be connected in part. And I was just talking to people around the league about why this move happened, and this wasn't the Giants telling me this is why it happened, but people on other teams trying to identify like how does this fit? I think the way it fits the most is having a steady presence. And Allen Robinson is known as a great guy, like a great guy, a good locker room guy, great person, all that. So with the pedigree and the ability to maybe be a positive influence on a huge asset and investment like Malik Neighbors, I think that's my general take there. But, you guys can also go back and listen when we're done at the beginning. I kind of went a little bit more in depth on Robinson, the player, but that's the gist of my take there. And thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate you. Authentic and Dash in the chat. Let's see. Lost my spot because I just realized we got a ton of questions in the queue. Yeah, you heard that was the end of the old fashioned, right? Let's see. Who asked if Allen Robinson could play corner? Hunter says, is there a hypothetical scenario the Giants cut or trade Evan Neal if he doesn't catch on? Probably not in camp, but in season. If he doesn't catch on, you can't trade him for anything because you can't get anything for him. And I mean, he was Joe Shane's number 7 overall pick 2 years ago. So no, I don't think they end up cutting him. I think you're taking the L. I guess if he was immature to the point where, it was detrimental to have him in the building, then that would be a way that you ended up cutting a player like that. But I mean, that would be the ultimate admission, Hunter, of an enormous failure that we all know, it could be that enormous failure already, but that would be really something. Brett says Gates choke slam some DB like the Undertaker. Nick Gates is a legend. I mean, come on. Any Giants fan who didn't like Nick Gates, I don't know what to tell you. Salient says our secondary needs some serious love. Salient, welcome back. Thanks for always being here. Thanks for commenting on the page all the time. I appreciate you. Bill says, yeah, they practically had a mini camp in AZ last year, preseason. I remember everyone flew out for it. Yep, exactly. Right. Yeah, that was like the linemen, the skilled players, the quarterbacks, etc. Not to be a bummer, says OG, but Giants fans have been optimistic since 2011, and all this organization does is fail its fans. I'm not getting fooled anymore by this team. I have to see it first, for real. OG, I think that's completely fair, and I've said this before, and I'll say this again, OG. I think that loyalty comes in different forms. Some people think, don't be negative about the team. You have to stay loyal. You got to be a Giant fan. OG, I think it's just as loyal, because this is always the fan I've been of anything. I went to University of Notre Dame. When Notre Dame teams were giving it up and sucking it up and not, coughing up games that they should have won or that kind of thing, I didn't say, it's okay, guys, right? I was trying to point out the weaknesses and trying to be constructively critical of here's how we can get better. Here's why we're not winning. This coach, this player, this, identify this sleeper should be playing more, and all the things you guys do as fans and diehard fans of the Giants. But I think like OG, I don't disagree with your idea of loyalty is not just cheering when things go well. It's booing when it's unacceptable, and you're showing them it needs to change. Now, like, you go back to, I remember Evan Ingram dropping that pass in that open practice and the whole stadium booing. That was really something. I mean, the players never will forget that. Like, that was something the players went, holy cow, right? Like, that was something that was clear. Okay, time for this guy to probably play in a different market. But it's still, I don't blame fans for saying enough when something is not going properly and is not changing, right? And so, OG, I appreciate that opinion, and Joe actually says too, he says, feel you, bro. I'm trying to forget about it by watching the Knicks win. Big Dash's wife is a Steelers fan. Steelers, Giants. Oh, Big Dash would have a fun September there, man. Appreciate you, Big Dash. Thank you, man. Thank you. Let's see. Dilla says maybe Jones could hit Slate with another bomb against Pittsburgh and get all of our hopes up yet again. Yeah, and then again, classic Daniel of showing you something and then, being under pressure there down near the red zone and throwing a tip pass that's up for grabs and intercepted. Hefe says, hey, fam. Hefe in the chat. What up, Hefe? Bill says, do we think there'd be another foreign game week 1? I mean, the kickoff is in Sao Paulo after all. I don't know. That's hard to see. That's hard to see. I don't think so. Let's see. We got Big Dash says, Pat, do you make your old fashions from scratch or do you have the pre-made mix? Also, what kind of whiskey? Old fashioned is my favorite drink. So Big Dash, I'll be honest. Tonight, I just used the Bullet Bourbon premix and I throw in the Luxardo cherries, like the real stuff, the grown in Italy cherries, and then like a little bit of orange twist. When I do like to make them though, like for my birthday, my wife got me a huge like old fashioned, set make from scratch type thing. So you're measuring all out and doing it that way. And I'm getting more and more into kind of the minutia, Big Dash, of like how we're doing it. Tinkering with this and that. I know I'm about to have a mezcal old fashioned. Probably tomorrow. Came with the set that I had. I love bourbon old fashioned, so that's what I went through first. Bill said, I see this. Bill says, Pat with the Luxardo flex. I love it. The Luxardo cherries, I mean, they're deadly. They're deadly. But yeah, Dash. So I would say what I do is like, it all depends on what's going on. If I'm having, a buddy over or a couple friends over and it's like a relaxed, low key evening and, I'm standing there making the drinks, mixing it out, trying to show off, make my best version of the drink. But if it's just me having a great, like tonight, 5 minutes before I got to go on live, I'm watching the Rangers. It goes to overtime. I had to make a drink quickly, so I'm going to the premix, which is very good. The Bullet Bourbon premix is excellent. I don't know if you've had that, Dash. D-Kid says, Pat, Aziz heading into his contract year. Be interesting to see whether he goes on the IR again with another soft tissue. You know what I mean? You know what, D-Kit? I'll just say this about Aziz. I've been covering him for a while now. He's a good kid who works hard. Like last year, he was so excited about finally feeling like he was healthy and ready to be a consistent contributor and at least just be on the field for a while and just see what happens. And he still got hurt. Like it was a really discouraging time for him. So I'll say, like, listen, here's what I'll say. I will tell you guys when someone who's hurt all the time is a lazy dude who doesn't work hard enough. Aziz is not that. But your comment is fair that, your comment is still fair that, like, the guy needs to stay healthy, obviously, right? Let's see. Brett says the schedule gods hate us. Well, schedule was easy 2 years ago. Last year was tough, right? Almost insurmountable. So we'll see if it settles in the middle this year. Do you think Tyrone Tracy will be RB1, says Steven? No. I mean, a late round pick like that to be RB1, that would really be something. I think even though Devin Singletary really ideally is like a complimentary back, I think it's definitely going to be a by committee, but I think Singletary is going to be like the most reliable player. Let's see. OG Knockout says, honestly, Pat, where do you think the Giants rank in the NFC? Because I think second to last. Oh, yeah. No, OG, I agree. I mean, I think that they have. I'm right with you, OG, in the fact that they need to prove to me they aren't one of the worst offenses in the league still. And frankly, their roster does not excite me. But as we've said, they have some young players who could all take steps forward. They did trade for Brian Burns to pair him with Dexter Lawrence, and hopefully Kayvon Thibodeau puts it all together as we've seen flashes here and there. Bobby Okereke was a good signing a year ago. You have, I do like Deonte Banks a lot. I think on offense, that's a big question. Quarterback, you did invest in the offensive line a little bit, but there's been a lot of like targeted kind of bargain signings to try to address things that are they going to? We'll see. Steven says, sup, Pat, love the content. Giants, big turnaround. We need a healthy unit, especially Daniel. Yeah, injuries are key. Hunter says, that's why I'm saying an early season game versus a weaker team would help the mojo. I don't think we could possibly overcome a horrible start. I totally agree, Hunter. Totally agree. Joey asked if the Giants are going to Germany. I do think it's a possibility, Joey. I don't know for sure, but it's certainly a possibility. I will say this. The fact that my guy B. London, Brandon London, was over there in Germany for the NFL draft doing that bit with Amani Toomer. I know the Giants got those rights in Germany, but boy, oh boy, that would be an interesting expense for the Giants when they're not even playing there this year. Steven says, just seems detrimental not to give a guy a chance who is performing well training and practice. Why, if the guy's showing, let's see if it's real, especially if we're struggling? Yeah, Steven, I agree. And that's why it makes you scratch your head even more. And Steven, I promise you, when I criticize the Giants over things, types of developments like you're describing where like 1 and 1 equals 3 and you're saying it should equal 2. Why is it equal 3 here? Like this is how bad teams stay bad. And so this is why I call these things out when I see them. Joey says Robinson hasn't been good since Chicago. No, I know. He hasn't produced in Chicago. His quarterback situations haven't been ideal. Like I was saying earlier, even the Rams, like Stafford only played 9 games that year. But definitely he needs to keep doing it for sure. Let's see. Honestly, if Shep could have stayed healthy, he'd give us the production Allen would at this point, says Illa. Yeah, except then Shepard was playing well last year and the Giants wouldn't put him on the field. It was very weird. Joey B says, Pat, you got all the Giants content all-stars in here now, bro. That's growth. Listen, I don't take any of this for granted. I really appreciate all you guys. Everybody jumping in here. Authentic, Hefe, Big Dash, all you guys in here. And everybody, all the loyal followers, the day oneers, Joey B, all these people who are just, Jacob, Bill, Hunter, like all of you. I appreciate everybody who's in here. Luann, like I know I'm not just saying it. Like I hope you guys understand that. I can't thank you enough for coming here, having these conversations. And I know I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating. So last season, we started Talkin Ball lives after the Giants games. So we're going to do that again this year. I will come out of the Giants locker room after talking to Brian Daboll and the Giants players. I come up to the press box where my computer is, where I've watched the game with my own eyes in the stadium, whether it's home or away. I touch up my stories for the Daily News quickly and file them. And then I go live on YouTube right here on the @PL on NFL channel, Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. And I bring you guys injury updates, analysis from the game, what I heard and saw in the locker room. Was this guy wearing a cast on his right foot or his left foot? Why did they make this play call? Why not? I'm going to get to the bottom of those things and bring it right to you right away, right after the game. And I think that you guys got a lot out of it last year, the people who were on this channel participating then. And I think anybody who was not aware we did that or is new to it this year, I think you're really going to love it. And I think it's going to continue to grow. The channel has grown. We're going to have more people involved in those and really end up generating an enormous dialogue when it comes to the Giants and even the NFL too. It doesn't have to be Giants talk, whether it's game days or during the week, because I do cover the whole league. But I am on the Giants every day. I'm covering them very closely. I've been on them since 2016, and I want to be able to bring these things directly to you guys. So as we sit here on May 9th, I will be going to Giants rookie minicamp on May 10th and May 11th, Friday, Saturday, coming up here. Be talking to Brian Daboll, doing press conferences with the rookie draft picks, and watching practices and out there watching on the field. So insights, analysis. We're definitely going to be having a fun Monday live coming off of this rookie mini camp where we dive into everything I saw and did. But also you can follow me on X, P Leonard NYDN, with updates there, and on Instagram. And then who knows, maybe I will do an impromptu live coming off of some of these practices. I definitely will be posting updates on the YouTube Shorts channel, so you can see those there as well. OG says, Giants fans bash me for my opinion about Daniel Jones just for the league to prove my point, and they ranked him 32nd among quarterbacks in the league. I guess I'm not looking stupid now. Yeah, OG feeling vindicated. Joey B says, Gates and Lemieux, I wanted to give them hog molly mullets, and they wouldn't let me. Shane Lemieux felt like he was going to be like the ultimate badass Giants guard, right? He just couldn't stay healthy. It's really sad, but love Shane. Hunter says, I'm not someone who gets super upset about injuries, but when Nick Gates broke his leg, that hit hard. Hardworking, would fight anyone for his teammates, had their back 24/7. No doubt. Chase Cota lit us up in the preseason. What's the story on him? Not sure yet. Looking forward to see him on the field as well. Brett, it'll be interesting to see what the Nathan Rourke and Allen Robinson signings do to this Giants roster, because there are going to have to be some casualties on the roster with these guys being signed. Like, they do need to cut a couple people once they sign everybody on this rookie minicamp. So as we talk here on May 9th, I'm not saying Cota is going to be one of them, but I am saying that if you're a depth player who's here to contribute, you do have to keep your eyes open and watch your back. There's another guy who had a really good camp and then never saw the field. Alex Bachman. You remember that? Alex Bachman was like everywhere. Guys couldn't guard him. He's playing well. And then it was just good organizations operate as meritocracies. Steelers had Danny seeing ghosts in the red zone. Yes, they did, Hunter. El Jefe says, Dash heard Trubisky and started thinking about whiskey. You and me both. It's that easy. It's that easy. Let's see. Yep, Luxardos are amazing. Authentic says he's playing some first-person shooter while listening to Pat. Man of the people. Authentic, just doing it, man. Doing it. Appreciate you. What are you playing? What game? Mick says Knob Creek makes a good pre-made old-fashioned. I'll try that out as well. Sean Gall says pre-mix. No. Yeah, listen. I'm not a snob, okay? So I like my old-fashions and I like making them, but I'm not a snob about it either. You know what I mean? Like it's impossible for me to be a snob about a good drink. If it tastes good, it tastes good. Brett says Nick McLeod is CB2. I hope so. I love Nick. Great dude, works hard. Speaking of meritocracies, you gotta reward guys who played well. You gotta reward guys who play well. Big Dash says, yes, sir, I have the pre-made too. Respect you. Joey B says, I hear you about Daniel Jones to OG, but guys never had a chance with weapons or protection. I hope he has a good year. I think he's talented, but has not helped, honestly. Different coaches and all. Dilla says he likes the UDFA Ovi Agofu we picked up. Think that kid uses his hands well as a pass rusher. Looking forward to seeing him develop. I'm looking forward to watching him and all the UDFAs at rookie minicamp and telling you guys what I see. All right, let's see. I think Aziz's weight gain with muscle contributed to his injuries. Yeah, it was interesting, Brett. He actually tried to train differently last year, and he thought initially it was like the change to his rehab had great returns and it had kept him on the field, but then obviously ends up getting hurt anyway. Let's see. Hey, West, what's going on? Good to see you. Stephen G says, what's going on with Darren Waller? This has been dragging on for too long. I expect him to officially retire. I think he's retired. The Giants are acting like he's retired. So, no mystery to me there, honestly, frankly. Brandon London being in Germany was a dead giveaway, says Big Dash. I agree. John Mara's interference is the reason this team hasn't achieved its potential over the years, says OG. Thank you for reading my comments, Pat. Much appreciated. Thank you for engaging, OG. Hunter says over under 1.5 national TV games this year. Whatever the minimum is, I would think that's what they start with. It's crazy that you interview the team, coaches, players, and now talking live with the fans. That's awesome. Go Giants, says Steven. Yeah, no, it's so much fun, Steven, especially because, you rewind to 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever, and you're thinking about writing something that then you want to get to people and you're popping a couple tweets out. But this forum we have here is an amazing one to get it right to you. And especially in the moment, I'm sure you guys as fans, just like me, after you watch the game, everything's fresh. You remember every damn play. You remember the biggest plays. You know the questions you have. You know the things you have problems with. And frankly, a lot of times the questions you guys have end up informing me on what to ask, right? Because you can see what the fan base is riled up about. And it's a lot of the times it's about the top plays that we all have the most questions about, whether it's the officiating, the play calling, right? What happened? Whose fault was it? Why did this guy? Or conversely, great play. Who made that decision? Why did Daniel Jones look off that receiver? How did he find that guy? How did Darren make that catch? Whatever it is, that's what I bring to you guys live. And we're going to keep going here. Listen, we do these Mondays and Thursdays at 9:00 Eastern time PM. And so next Monday, I'll be coming to you guys with rookie minicamp highlights and breakdowns, as well as whatever other news has dropped on the team, constant updates, maybe breaking news. I have broken news several times on these live chats. And if I can help it, I save things I have for these live chats so that you guys get it first. So I've done that like 2 or 3 times already. So we'll continue to do that when I can. And obviously with the schedule release coming, we'll have a lot to talk about on Monday regarding the schedule as well. Joey says, Pat, I have a 2.5-hour drive to and from MetLife for the home games, and your lives after the game get me through the drive, usually almost, if not all the way home. Love them. Joey, appreciate that. And you're participating, and you're in there, and you're a day oneer, man. Thank you. Dilla says, Shane Lemieux had a hockey last name. He was never going to work. Oh, man. Apex Legends. All right. Can the Giants kidnap Howie Roseman without getting in trouble with the league? Just asking for a friend. I know, right? OG, he's very good. Aziz has a lot of talent, just can't get any rhythm on the shelf, says Hunter. Yeah, and I think, too, with an organization that struggles to keep players healthy and a guy who's been injured a lot, the way I look at Aziz, I love Aziz as a person, and he's really good when he's on the field. But, and no offense to him, but, like, you can't count on that player. You know what I mean? And I'm not just saying Aziz specifically. I'm just saying any player in that situation, you just can't count on them. Ricardo says, Pat, any chance they bring in a corner like Patrick Peterson or Xavier Howard? What are your thoughts on Peterson? Do you think he has anything left? I think any guy who's going to command a significant amount of money, it's less likely. Also, those guys are in a position where they're probably, usually guys with that caliber or pedigree, they are looking for a place where, okay, maybe I'll make a little less money, but they're thinking I'm also going to be putting myself in a position where maybe I can win and advance in the playoffs and earn a bigger contract next year because I'm on a good team. So it's usually hard to land those players as a team like the Giants projecting to be what they likely are going to be in 2024. So, not to be a Debbie Downer, but that's my take on that, Ricardo. And Ricardo, like I was saying earlier too, I wish I had more on like what was going to happen at CB2. I don't right now. A lot of tight-lipped people about that discussion point. So, definitely will bring you something when I have it. D-Kit says, I'm finding it hard to get excited about this roster, Pat. I agree, D-Kit, but hopefully we see some things on the field that we like in the spring and the summer. Brett M says, we need full-time old-school Giants uniforms. Talk to somebody, Pat. Brett, I think I said this on the chat before. I don't know if you were on that one that night, but I told John Mara to his face that they need to wear the Reds. And I'm not saying every game, but I love the red jerseys. I know they have a bad history with them. I know. And you guys are probably going to say, screw that. Shut up, Pat. But I think they're cool. And, when they had these legacy games, when they painted the end zone red like 2 years ago, it was the coolest I've ever seen the stadium, by far. The coolest I've ever seen the stadium. Steven says, why do you think Snake Quan signed with Philly? Wow, Snake Quan. Holy cow. I thought if he left the Giants, he'd sign with the Texans. Closer in proximity, family, doesn't have to move. Also, definitely a chip on the shoulder with how the Giants, in his mind, treated him, disrespected him, lowballed him, those types of things. I do think the Giants handled it poorly at some key junctures. So I do think there's a revenge factor element to it. But ultimately, it came down to they offered him the most money, the type of money that he felt like he deserved and was worth. And it ends up being in a place where he's got a lot of family and friends who root for the team, who live near the team. He lives near there. His family's from Pennsylvania. So all of those factors contributed. But it was the most guaranteed money ultimately. And that was a big factor. But, remember, he wanted to win too. And he was willing to stay with the Giants and wanted to stay with the Giants for a time. But at this juncture where, obviously, as he pointed out, the Giants never ultimately offered him again this coming year after all those negotiations the previous season. But Saquon wants to win because winning breeds another contract and a better contract, and the star power rises and all of that. And that's how he views himself as. He views himself as a guy who, if he gets to those big spots and moments and stages, that he can do it. So he wants to win. Joey says, I think we address a lot of needs in the draft and with UDFA and free agency, but it looks good on paper. I got to see how it looks on the field. Is there a possible big in-season trade we make? It would be great, Joey, if the Giants are in a position where you're talking about a trade to acquire something or someone. I think it's more likely that the Giants are in a position where they're selling at the deadline this year, based on looking at the future. But honestly, you couldn't even be that way this year because the GM and the coach are under some pressure. So I think that given their cap situation, it's not likely from where we stand right now that they're going to be able to fit any kind of significant asset onto the roster, come mid-season, right? I do think, though, Joey, that I know I'm kind of going roundabout and answering this both ways. The behavior of Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll is such that they understand the pressure there is to win. And so they're adding veterans, they're adding pieces as best they can, whether it's veteran salary benefits or a crazy expensive contract and trade for a guy like Brian Burns. They know they need to win. They know they need to improve. They know they need to do it now. And so if they start having success this year and the team's looking good and suddenly they're looking like a contender, then I could see them being ultra aggressive because now they're the team that 2 out of 3 years has exceeded expectations, has headed to the playoffs, and it's now or never. And you just capitalize on those opportunities. You don't let them go by. You don't wait till the next year. I don't see them being in that position, though. That was why I started answering the question the way I did. But, of course, with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll Daboll's on the hot seat, maybe Shane's on the warm seat, selling at the deadline necessarily isn't, the best move for job security there either, even if it would be the better thing for the team the long term. D-Kid says, Pat, curious, what type of things are you looking for that may be newsworthy at rookie minicamp? I would be interested to know. So, well, first of all, I would say, D-Kit, one of the things I'm going in looking at is what does Malik Neighbors look like on the field, right? Next to everybody else when he's, whether he's running reps against them live 11 on 11, whether it's 7 on 7, whether it's just routes on air. How does he glide? How does he stride? How does he look on the outside and in the slot? How different is this type of weapon than what the Giants have had recently? And I really want to hone in on exactly what Malik Neighbors is and what he can be for them. Getting up close, everybody knows he's a top 10 talent. He's the number 6 overall pick, but kind of getting into the details of exactly what that looks like and what that could mean for the Giants. So that's the number one thing I'm looking at. I know Dan Duggan from The Athletic did some good reporting on, I didn't really run these down this year, but did some good reporting on like the bonuses, the signing bonuses that were handed out to the UDFAs, which is a good indication of how likely they are to factor in and where their priorities were when it comes to the team and who they wanted. And the North Dakota State tackle, Jake Kubas, Dan reported that he had a $270,000 guarantee number in dollars. And I think that reflects, a high priority player there. And given that the Giants did not draft an offensive lineman for developmental purposes, that's something I'm really interested in. Could that be the developmental swing tackle that you brought into the building? something I'm watching as well. Of course, you're always watching for people to pop. Like if Nathan Rourke is on the field, like we were saying, with his lack of NFL experience, if he's eligible to pass in this, and I believe he will be, I don't know that for sure, but I would like to watch that as well. So those are some of the things I'm looking for, D-Kit. But definitely it's an interesting job because you do have to define some things you're going to focus on, but you also have to keep your eyes open for both things. I think sometimes it's challenging. Some people, they'll keep their eyes open for everything, but they have struggled to identify the main thing. And then there's some people who zero in on one thing they want to watch, but they don't see much else. And I do try to do both. Let's see. Joey B says, our athletic trainer and staff have been here since Parcells. They are ancient. I'm sorry. And there's been a lot of turnover in other departments, right? And basically every other department almost. I agree with you about Aziz. Best ability is availability, said Hunter. Dilla was saying, I think he was saying a couple of players. Were you saying Gates and Lemieux have been toast for a minute? Dilla saying that about something earlier. Sorry about that. Oh, Patterson and Howard. Got it. True, but they also really lack experience in their secondary. So what's good for the Giants is not necessarily like what the high end is that another team's looking for, right? Joey says we need the old logo back on the helmets and we need the legacy unis for him and the color rush we used for away games. That's my take. Joey, you're getting a star on that one. I like it. One of those two would help develop Banks too, would be worth the starter plus mentor for Banks. Dilla says, bring back the red jerseys regardless of our record in them. I agree, man. No doubt. Bill says, as a matter of fact, Pat, I just picked up a red Tiki Barber jersey off eBay. Sick. Brett says, Giants should practice underwater. Soft. Either that or get Joe Judge to run practices, but give him weekends off. I do think Judge is underappreciated. Ricardo says, people forget that Saquon is from Pennsylvania. Let's see. Joey B says, I'd love for us to go get Josh Allen. Joey, every team in the league that isn't the Chiefs would love to go get Josh Allen, man. Damn. What a player. Holy cow. And let me tell you, Brian Dable has got to miss Josh Allen too, right? I mean, come on. You become a head coach, but you leave Josh Allen. Ricardo says, Pat, what about one more pass rusher if possible? If so, do you have one in mind? That would be a lot of investment in that. I do think you want to reinforce the interior pass rush as well, because you got to stop the run too. It can't just be Dex and everybody else. I know you brought Jordan Phillips in, but I do think you need to solidify that interior at this point before bringing in another pass rusher. More pass rushers don't hurt, Ricardo, for sure. But geez, given what they invested in Brian Burns, I mean, I almost called him Brent Burns, by the way. I watched too much hockey. So say we are 4-4 at the deadline. Would you possibly see the Giants go all in to try to make a run and save their jobs? Yeah, I guess I could see that, but that would be a pretty sad state of affairs if they were doing it with that record for sure. But yeah, I could see those things like that happening. Philly could have gotten by with a guy like Singletary. To me, they should have invested the money in the secondary, would have given them more flexibility in the draft as well, says Deilla. Yeah, Deilla, that'll be interesting to see because it was un-Philly in many ways for them to make that kind of investment in a running back. They don't just view Saquon as a running back, though. That's part of the deal. But I do agree with you. Interesting resource allocation, and certainly it's going to be judged one way or another based on the results. Brett says, I'm going into the season wishing we got at least one O-lineman in the draft. Big mistake. Help me out, Pat. Dallas got 3, and they don't suck. Brett, I can't say it any better than that. I agree. Can you invite players to rookie camp without giving them the contract? Hunter says, yes. So every rookie mini camp is filled with, the draft picks, the UDFA signings, and then there are some players who are already on the roster but are inexperienced and young enough that they're eligible to still compete in it. So you'll see guys who are already on the roster that aren't like rookie picks or UDFAs there as well. And then the rest of them are rookie tryouts. So every team brings rookie tryout players there who are not under contract, but are there trying out for one. Bill says we did get a new strength and conditioning guy this year. Yeah, Aaron Wellman, but That's strength and conditioning. I think that really the injury histories and the management of the guys' bodies goes back to the athletic training staff, and how their bodies are managed in that way. Strength and conditioning is a different component of that. Let's see. Hunter says Chiefs would love him too. Wouldn't have to face Josh Allen then. Joey says, let's see. Brett says, why did the Bills trade their pick so the Chiefs could get Worthy? Sorry, not a Giants question. Oh, no, Brett, that's fine. It doesn't need to be a Giants question. Just because they felt like the player that they were looking for, Coleman, I believe, was still going to be available back where they went. And so they didn't mind taking more assets in order to back up there and get it, even if the Chiefs were coming to get a player, because the player that the Chiefs got in Worthy were just not there and that high on the Bills board. And obviously they didn't feel as much about Worthy as the Chiefs did. Still interesting, obviously, that you're handing that team that player and going to get something else. But I think you've seen interdivision rivals trade with each other before. I think ultimately it just comes down to your confidence in the scouting of those players. So, in their mind, they weren't giving away a guy that they wanted, right? So they didn't think highly enough of him where they were worried about giving him away. I think, Joey, you talking about Dalton Reisner? Somebody mentioned him earlier. Ricardo says, I think Singletary is going to surprise everybody. He's a good back, very good back, more than capable. Yes. I actually said earlier, Ricardo, that I think he's my, I do agree. He's my sleeper, that people will say, oh, this guy's better than I thought. Bill says, thanks for the info, Pat. I don't know how they take care of the guys. Yeah, Bill, it's more like this. So like the Ronnie Barnes and the training staff, they have a voice in kind of how the whole program comes together. Strength and conditioning is a component of that and an element of that, but decisions made about when guys are practicing or when they're not, how they're managing things, when they come back, when they get back on the field, when not, that's the athletic training staff. That's not like the call of the strength coach. And so the strength and conditioning is a complement to that process. But the athletic training staff is more of the people who are sitting in the room talking to the head coach and, even general manager and ownership about how we're managing guys' bodies, right? Things like that. Yeah, Joey B, I don't know why they haven't kicked the tires. I can't say they haven't, honestly, on Reisner. I wouldn't say that. That's not something I would be reporting. But I do think, they saw Stinney, Runyon Jr., and Illuminor clearly as priorities. Hunter says, I agree with Ricardo. Singletary is more than capable to be a 75% plus back for us to be successful. Yeah, no, I think people will like what he gives you. He's small, but he's a capable pass catcher. He's reliable. He's a good guy. I think could provide some leadership as well. Guys, we went 2 hours tonight. Thank you so much for being here. Remember, we are sponsored by Bet Online and by Estate 98 Coffee. It's an Esencia Day Cafe from El Salvador. Dates back to 1798. I drink it all the time when I'm doing this Talkin Ball lives and Talkin Ball podcast. Of course, when I'm not drinking old fashions when it's late at night. But remember, we are here Mondays and Thursdays, 9 p.m. Eastern. Rookie minicamp coming up. Follow me for all the updates on the YouTube channel at PL on NFL and on X, P Leonard NYDN on IG as well, PL on NFL. Follow me there. I'll see you Monday night otherwise, but we'll continue to bring you more content analysis and instant updates on your favorite team. We'll tell you what I think of Nathan Rourke if I see him on the field, Neighbors, and all these rookies as the Giants continue to round into form. Get your schedule questions and observations ready as we move into next week, and the NFL prepares to announce its full schedule as well as the international games, and the Giants, as we've talked about, could end up being the team in Munich against the Carolina Panthers. So we will see. Hunter says, thanks again. Have a good mini camp. Joey B says, thanks for a great live. Bill says, thanks for a great show and the shout outs, Pat. You're the best. A West says, cheers. Thanks for the stream, Pat. Authentic says, be easy. I appreciate you guys. Brett says, thank you. Guys, thank you so much. As always, I will see you next time on Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard. Take care.